Hello learners, I Dr. Divya Ojha, Academic Associate from School of Vocational Education and Training, welcomes you all to this session on your program Certificate in Fashion Design, that is CFTE. So learners, today's topic of discussion is careers in fashion, that is one of the unit of your course 4 BFD 074 Communication and Entrepreneurship. So to have discussion on this topic, careers in fashion, today we have with us Professor A.K. Gaba, Program Coordinator, Certificate in Fashion Design. I welcome you, sir. So let me brief what we will discuss in this today's session, that is on careers in fashion. So as this unit career in fashion is the last unit of your program certificate in fashion design. So this particular unit career in fashion has been kept with a purpose for the last of your in the last course and the last unit, because as you have gone through the other courses, that is basics of pattern making and sewing, fundamentals of fashion design, so we hope that you, after acquiring that skill and knowledge on basics of pattern making, sewing, and getting the knowledge about the third unit, that is third course, that is introduction to fashion industry, you can choose and you can know what are different career opportunities you can have in this particular fashion field. So when you go through this unit, you can have an idea that what are different opportunities you can get from in this particular fashion industry, and what career you can choose according to your choice or skill what you think you can have. So this particular unit career in fashion, you will learn different types of job opportunities, what roles you have to perform in that particular job, or if you want to go for the further studies, you can choose that particular area in the fashion design. So let us start the discussion on the unit careers in fashion. Now I request sir to please brief the learners about the unit.
Thank you, Dr. Divya. Let me join Dr. Divya to welcoming you all for this very, very important session on careers in fashion. So our focus will be generally career in fashion, as topic says, but we will be discussing particularly on careers in fashion design. काफ़ी स्टूडेंट्स जो ऑलरेडी रजिस्टर्ड हैं इस प्रोग्राम के लिए और वो एग्जामिनेशंस की तैयारी कर रहे हैं जिनका एग्ज़ाम होने वाला है, और कुछ ऐसे भी व्यूअर्स हैं जो प्लान कर रहे हैं कि दे वांट टू रजिस्टर फॉर दिस पर्टिकुलर प्रोग्राम. सो उनके मन में भी काफ़ी क्वेश्चंस होंगे कि ये प्रोग्राम हम सर्टिफिकेट प्रोफेशनल एजुकेशन और ये पर्टिकुलर कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ फैशन डिज़ाइन एरिया क्यों करें, और ये इग्नू में कैसे होता है, और क्लासेस कहाँ लगती हैं, और इसके सर्टिफिकेट कंप्लीट करने के क्या क्या इसके फ़ायदे हैं जॉब पर्सपेक्टिव के हिसाब से भी, और इसमें आप एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी इन्हेंस करना चाहते हैं, दैट इज़ आल्सो वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट. So let me brief to all of you, those who are planning as well as register for this particular program. This employability perspective of every vocational education program is basic objective and goal to enhance the employability.
Yes.
सो अभी जब हम देखें वोकेशनल एजुकेशन ये कि इन्हेंस करता है एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी की, क्या हमारे पास कोई रिसर्च एविडेंस ऐसा है? हमने जो अपनी स्टडी की, जिसे ये जो आज का टॉपिक डिस्कस करने जा रहे हैं कैरियर्स इन फैशन डिज़ाइन, बहुत से स्टूडेंट जो पास आउट हुए हैं वो साइड बाय साइड कुछ और स्किल भी उनकी जो चल रही थी, और फैशन डिज़ाइन में आने के बाद उन्होंने अपनी जो मेजर फोकस है वो स्किल्स एंड कॉम्पिटेंसीज वो वोकेशनल एजुकेशन के बारे में जो इंक्रीज़ की है. सो वर्ल्ड के अंदर इफ़ यू सी जो हमारी इंडस्ट्री है वो लेटेस्ट वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक रिपोर्ट और अदर्स इंटरनेशनल लेबर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन रिपोर्ट जो बता रही हैं सेक्टर वाइज जो जॉब की रिक्वायरमेंट है, जो स्किल गैप्स की स्टडी हुई है हमारे नेशनल स्किल डेवलपमेंट कॉर्पोरेशन की तरफ से, उसमें टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर्स को इम्पोर्टेंस दी गई है. और उस टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर्स के लिए यदि हम टेक्नोलॉजी का भी फ्यूचर जॉब्स को अलाइनमेंट करें, जैसे आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस की बात हो रही है और प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग स्किल्स की बात हो रही है, और उसके साथ साथ रोबोटिक मशीन लर्निंग भी काफ़ी वास्ट एंड वेरी स्पीड से वो टेक्नोलॉजी एंटर कर चुकी है. अब इंडस्ट्री में इफ़ वी गो एवरी सेक्टर दिस टेक्नोलॉजी इन अलाइनमेंट इज़ वेरी मच नीडेड.
Yes.
सो उसकी जो बातें हम कर रहे हैं कि फैशन से कॉन्टेक्स्ट में क्या इस टेक्नोलॉजी का कोई मेजर रोल है, क्या जॉब रिक्वायरमेंट्स हैं. सो देयर टू टाइप ऑफ स्किल. वन इज जॉब स्पेसिफिक स्किल्स and second is vocational education specific skills. So vocational education core area is fashion design sectors, and on the other hand side if you see the multiple skills requirements as like artificial intelligence or machine learning, what will be their role in job market in the textile sector. That major point we discussed. And if you see before COVID-19 and after COVID-19 all business scenario change,
Yes.
all the sectors including textile, apparel and fashion design sectors also. So these sectors enhance the skill requirement, and whatever degrees and diploma or certificate educational, professional, vocational or technical institutions are offering, and they are finding gap of the skill gaps. So industry says they are facing a huge problem to getting the skilled trained manpower in these particular sectors. So we tried to Indira Gandhi Open University particularly have last couple of years identified some skill component programs as like CFD, one of them what we are discussing today, and come out these approaches with giving more focus on skills for employability. That's why we discuss. So if we question you ask the sir क्या क्या questions जो students पूछ रहे हैं कि इसके employability के क्या
Yes.
perspective हैं. इफ़ यू सी इसके काफ़ी जो स्किल्स के फैशन डिज़ाइन को पास करने के बाद सर्टिफिकेट करने के बाद देयर सम लेवल्स as per the National Skill Qualification Framework or as well as the higher education UGC curriculum framework. If you see, so certificate, diploma or degree and post graduation,
Yes.
even research. So from School of Vocational Education and Training, we are offering programs as well, not only the fashion design but certificate to PhD. If the case is certificate program, what students will get job, what level. If you enhance your level of professional or vocational education, the certificate level is 4 as per the National Skill Qualification Framework is concerned. Under this course, you will be able to get the different kind of job roles. If you see, as a source managers, textile designers, you have a pattern makers and fashion designers, and their list are big. For instance, fashion merchandisers
Yes.
and fashion forecasters and self-entrepreneur and fashion journalists. These days, a lot of fashion
Fashion
shows are
journalist.
being organized, and I came to know if you do certificate then diploma vertical mobility and then you go degree level programs, then you will be having different job roles.
Yes.
So I think it is better to discuss this one by one job roles what we are discussing here at the moment. And the first is sourcing manager. If you see the what is a job role, but after certificate program you will not be appointed as a directly sourcing manager. You may be sourcing supervisors
Yes.
and then you will be having a sourcing assistant and you are assisting to manager for these particular programs. So what are the job role of this particular sourcing manager? And that is knowledge of cotton. I think our curriculum covered all these
Yes.
aspects, and knowledge of cotton and checking the quality of the cotton or yarn. That type of job role you should have, and you should be aware when you passed out our certificate program and our text material which has been designed and written, one of the best national expert academia industry together, they have designed this particular program, and we have expectation after studying this certificate program what are the learning outcome. You will be able to analyze the market demand and supply of particular skills and competencies what you have passed out, and you see the familiar with the current trend and prices of the raw materials, procurement of cotton or yarn, and as per the requirement of the fabric. These are the job roles of sourcing manager. And now initially individual can be engaged as a trainee, as I just said.
Yeah. So I think this particular job, that is sourcing manager, we can say it is just the starting point, because it is for the sourcing of the raw material. So from the industry, the basic one initial part is how we will source the raw material. So you can go for that particular part of job to have the experience of fabric or the yarn, and you can go at the selection part or the sourcing of the raw material.
Yeah, first, if you passed out certificate program,
Yes.
and then you see the advertisement of any industry or employer, the sourcing manager, and you should have appointed as a trainee, an
Yes.
internship. and then you will, after some extent of 6 months or 1 year experiences, you will be appointed as
As
a
a higher
supervisor
post,
and higher
yeah.
positions, as all in vocational sector.
Yes.
These are the, you should have a knowledge of raw material. That's very very important in this particular role. If you don't have any knowledge on raw materials or fabrics
We
or
cannot go for the
yeah,
final productions.
final production, that is very much, and then you should have a little bit knowledge of tools and raw materials for this particular
Yes.
fashion products, otherwise no market will give you
A job,
importance.
yes.
And the second most important part is of this skills and competency is that you should be having a knowledge of tools, and then what type of tools. Raw materials is the one of them,
Yes.
but tools, whatever job profile you have been given, and then how to handle. We have covered all these particular aspect in our course material also. So second job material, if you see the careers in textile designer, after sourcing this manager, you see the textile manager, the next job role. What are the job roles of tax manager? That we discuss in our unit also. At the first is you will be able to prepare different types of design.
Yes.
Yeah, you should have a skills and competencies where you can have a knowledge, and then you can ready to perform and designing these particular products. Number two, listening with clients and other team member, because in this textile major you should have multiple skills, and you should have a knowledge of relationships, communication skills.
Yes.
You should have a raw material knowledge. Then you should have a liaising, how to liaison with the clients as well as your bosses,
Team members, yes.
manager, team members, and manager, retailer, marketer, and inventory managers. So your role is as a nodal officers in this particular industry, where you will be appointed as a textile manager at the level 4, as like other job roles we discussed for fabric managers and sourcing manager. There also you will be not appointed as a direct employment of manager. You should have a as a training.
Yeah,
first,
they will start from the initial stage. That from there first they will learn, then they can go for the higher position.
Exactly. We in course 2, when we have discussed details about the different types of skills in pattern
Pattern
making.
making.
And then in the first course we discussed about the
Designing.
ICT, through role of ICT in designing. So we have given the preliminary knowledge and competencies curricula, and slowly जब आप इस कोर्स को पढ़ते हैं, फर्स्ट और सेकंड कोर्स को, तो उसकी जो स्किल्स एंड कॉम्पिटेंसीज हैं, और वो बच्चे कह रहे हैं कि सर आप इंग्लिश में बोल रहे हैं, इसलिए मैं बीच बीच में हिंदी में बोल रहा हूँ, कि बच्चे जो हैं जो इस प्रोग्राम को देख रहे हैं, एक मैसेज अभी रिसीव हुआ कि दे वांट इन हिंदी. ओके, we are explaining it in both languages, but the point here for discussion is the role of textile designer. So textile designers के लिए you should have a creativity, because in every sector industry is looking a persons for employability. Those have innovations, ideas, creativity ideas in the particular field, and they will be paid more. It is not necessary. Somebody students asking questions, sir इसकी starting में salary कितना है? सैलरी जो है वो जॉब रोल के हिसाब से है, और स्टाइपेंड्स ट्रेनिंग में देते हैं कुछ इंडस्ट्री, एंड जॉब रोल में 10,000 से लेके लाखों तक पर मंथ जो है एम्प्लॉयर देता है. वो ऑल डिपेंड्स अपॉन दी your talent and skills and competency, how to perform the work and the job which has been given to you, and per the expectation of the industry or employer, whatever you call. So editing and putting design and to on repeat, there is a lot of changes required, very fast changes required in our fashion products. It is not like when we are having a chocolate or ice cream in the same brand we are eating, but in fashion products it change very fast, and due to influence of social market, social network, and media, electronic media, print media, when they see their celebrities to latest fashion products, immediately next the consumer demand that particular product. So that influence, as a textile designer, you should have been knowledge what is going on in a market and what type of products
they have to.
They have. There is also specialized job.
Yes.
I will discuss in our discussion next. Some industry appointing these people, as like we discuss fashion journalism, fashion communication. Similarly, fashion predictors.
Yes.
So how quickly an industry can predict this particular demand and fashion products, and how it will be different from the existing designing, all that. These sort of courses and program we have discuss. And as a career path, you will be having typically textile design begins in assistant designer first. It is not necessary you will be appointed as a manager. Every industry has their own different structure And for organization structure, it depends upon the size of the industry in apparel sectors. Some are small industry, some are big industry. Accordingly, they appoint the people as per their requirement. But initially stage, if we say ki you will be appointed assistant manager, it is wrong,
Yes.
because it all shows your strength and weaknesses in the particular field. Industry see the talent and skills. If you perform after passing the certificate, you have a skills and competencies, it will enhance your employability perspective, a higher position, and you will be
Yes.
appointed as a assistant manager. If sports, you have knowledge of pattern making, but you are not able to perform as per the industry's requirements. So industry, what they will see, it all depends upon industry to industry,
Yes.
this organization structures and their all norms and procedures. If industry see he or she has some talent, but she is not having any experiences. So initial stage they will appoint as a trainee, then they shift to after 6 months as a training managers,
Yes.
assistant managers. So different job roles are there, and with 2 3 year experience, designers become manager of the team, or she can become director depending upon the skills and competency what we
Yes.
are discussing here. So job role of text designer we discuss in detail. Now we are coming to next role, that is fabric technician. It's a very technical this job roles, and liaising between designers and fabric sourcing unit, that is the most important job roles
Yes.
he or she has to play when you are being open. But somewhere we have also noticed it is not necessary what we are discussing job roles of particular jobs. Some industry, what they do, they give preference to multiple skill per person. As somebody is also having first IT skills, the fabric technician, and she or he has also knowledge of fashion communication,
Yes.
pattern making. So this program of certificate in fashion design we develop like this. So if you have a multiple skills, and industry will give preference to you for appointing as well as giving resources and all that. So matching a standard of fabric as per the requirement and creating new fabric ideas.
Requirements.
And we have a latest experiences, and if we see during festival seasons, and all industry giving different designing and productions and size packing. Packing also one of the most attractive sale of every product. But in fashion also they are giving different multicolor designing, and they come out to resell their product. So
Yes.
they are appointing next role what we will be discussing as a
Fabric technician.
technicians. So technicians, textile strength and color, and fabric technician can begin his career as a trainee or fabric assistant, whatever, depending upon the as like other job roles. And fabric technician level, the later is senior fabric technician. It is not unnecessary you will be appointed junior or senior, but you if you have a highly qualification, only not only qualification, but your experiences, you have a knowledge and industry experiences, you will be given a senior position at the
Yes.
respective enterprises. I think 3 job roles what we discuss. There are so many job roles which we will discuss, but the 3 important job roles. This fashion design program, I'm not talking this careers in
Yes.
fashion. I focus on careers in fashion design. So when we come careers in fashion, their job role will be different. For instance, that is careers in pattern maker.
Yes.
So how to design as a pattern, and that's our course too.
Yes.
Just we discussed about this, and as a familiar with major tools we discussed already, and tools we are sizing. I think you
How,
explain this
yes,
is pattern
like
making how to.
pattern mask maker, they can become as a in the fashion industry. Like they have, we have discussed about how to take the body measurement or different tools of taking measurement or to development of pattern methods they do. So this is the main job they can have as a pattern maker in any industry, because developing a garment, first step we do is to develop a pattern, and it is a job of a very higher responsibility, that if they are not good at making the pattern, the garment will not be perfect. So it is a responsible job. So of the career path, they can have start from learning how to develop the pattern at the industry level. Then after having an experience, they can go for a senior pattern master in any industry.
But you just said ki the specific job role is to how to measure size.
Yes.
Is there any specific designing on the basis of design requirement difference between measure the size of any production for the kids or for the
Yes.
youth for
Yes.
the older person.
Like in any fashion industry, or when we talk about the industrial production or the bulk production of any garment, whether it is for the kids or the female wear or the men's wear, they, after having a survey, they fix a standard measurement, that we have the sizes. When we go to buy a garment, we have different sizes, small, medium, large. So after having a small survey, they fix their standard size, and whether it is for the kids or men's wear or women's wear, and according to that, the role for the pattern master is decided, that on the basis of that they have to develop the pattern for design,
It,
on the basis of what the design has been given to them.
okay, but it also, I think, depend upon the quality of the cotton or the
Or
clothes.
it is the design what they receive, it is up to then it is decided what type of fabric they need to for constructing the garment. So first step what they do, they receive the design, then they develop the pattern then the fabric is chosen to construct the garment.
So basic skills and competency required for cloth as per the
Yes,
design.
as per the design,
What we
and the knowledge what method of pattern development they have to choose.
choose, that is also second important
Yes,
point.
yes.
I think more we explain in our this study
Study
in self
material.
learning materials with illustrations. We
Yes.
have explained, and most of learners who passed
They
out,
they have the practical
they have
knowledge
practical
also.
knowledge
Yes.
and learning by doing through our online platforms, and I think we interacted with them. Lot of innovative ideas they have designed. But the most important pattern maker is a skilled person, who earn and is credibility and progression on the basis of the technical skills.
Yes.
It's more, it is not skill what we're discussing on our job specific skills also, because when you don't have these technical skills, no employer will give you
Yes.
the particular this job offer. So this job what we are discussing, the job role of pattern maker, is very much is require technical skills
Yes.
and vocational skills as well, to understand. This generally start their career as a helper or assistant to pattern maker. Later, after getting some of experience as like other job roles, they will be appointing as a major cutting pattern makers. Now, the most important role what we are
Yes.
discussing today, the
And
most
the
topic.
most known job in this fashion field is the fashion designer.
Fashion designer. We have discussed the in surrounding sub roles or different kind of job requirement by the industry. So no fashion designer. So what is a job role of fashion designer? First we have to, you should have a knowledge and drawing and development of a design, particular design. And if you are having some innovative ideas and you are thinking to design a particular as per the taste of the consumer,
Yes.
consumer liking and disliking is very much important, because it's in a fashion industry, a lot of members, core team members are involved. Of course the industry employers is number one, but under that lot of pattern maker, designers, technical expert, fabric expert, and the all different job roles people are involved to come out the final product. So if you see the design and is not as per the customer choice, the whole resources, human resources as well as cost resources, physical and monetary resources will be waste. So your job is very much importance in every fashion industries. A lot of big and full names or celebrities, fashion designers, and we referred so many our text materials, case studies also. They have shared their experiences how they become a successful fashion designers. So you should have a knowledge to analyze needs and market trend what we
Yes.
discussed, and you should also have a sourcing raw material, other products, where you get the raw materials. That is also very important. And pattern making and making it garments, it is important roles, and it may be kids, it may be
Yes.
youth, and of course our other age groups, even gender wise,
Yes.
female, male, this liking, disliking, and that is fashion influence in the market basis of the pattern. And there is also, we have seen the pattern making and making it garments in a coordination with design and peer group. It is not role. Designer role is as like other we discuss in nodal officer and technicians. Similarly way, he or she should have a knowledge of and how
Every
to
field.
every field.
Like
And
earlier jobs that we have discussed about the fashion fabric technician or the sourcing manager. So fashion designer on whole, they should have all
all
the
knowledge.
knowledge.
So that job specific skills we
Yes.
discuss, technicians or whatever
Pattern
pattern map
maker.
maker. But here fashion designers, you should have a multiple skill.
Yes.
If you don't have these multiple skill, how can you take work from your subordinates
Yes.
from different roles? That's why we explain and liaising with supervisor and marketing people also. Fashion designer role is there and keeping update with latest trends in the fashion industry. So all skills what we discussed in the previous job roles is incorporated in these careers in fashion and visit the participate in the fashion show and trade fairs. That is very very important. So what are the basic point to career path of this particular fashion design? It's very very important. Fashion designer play a versatile role in fashion industry depending on type of company he she engaged. That's we discussed already. And because industry size it depends upon some industry have a very small as a beginner, they don't have
Yes.
larger network. But if you see big industry is a multinational companies and entering into fashion products, they have a vast setup and retailing setup across the globe, not only one country. We have a global players, we have a national players, we have a local players. If you see the local players are going to appoint a fashion designer, what type of skill he or she is looking. So first point is fashion designer play a versatile role depending upon the skill. It's my industry size is very small. So I will see the person who is having multiple skill
Yes. Skills.
and plus also and this the location of the industry and the employee that also influence to hire a particular
Yes.
expert. Second, if it is a small company, as I just said, retailer, then one has to perform multiple role. If a big industry, they have a job specific role, so
Specific
they can't
roles.
afford.
Yes.
Basically, so much production is not there, and just a beginner in small towns, and they can't afford all the multiple skill this job specific skill person. So they have multiple skills. You have to play fashion designer role,
Yes.
pattern maker role, retailer role, fashion communication general. So degree, if you see certificate, diploma, and then you go for degree level program which we are planning. So that
Yes.
degree will help him or her to get this particular job role. So big firms have actually design team headed by managing director, designer, or assistant designer. These are the most important job roles what we discussed in the field of this fashion designing. Now, last point which I would like to discuss fashion merchandiser. That is a fundamental knowledge of fashion merchandiser and textile, assessing the requirement of product, analyzing with the manufacturing review progress, and ensuring regular supply of the product during season. This is very important point. If raw material this supply is stopped, so it is difficult to work by the fashion designer or industry to produce the product and sell in the market in time. If you see summer weather and your winter weather, all of a sudden the demand for this textile in increase. So people, those who are selling the product, is for raw material stop. It is difficult for them to have a particular context to be given. So I think we cover all the point. Initially, one can join as a trainee, as like other.
Yes.
Then every job role they have to be appointed as a trainee. Then later they become this particular a special job role. Now we are coming to the fashion retail manager, and there in this particular manager you should have a managing the retail store. And that last point we are discussing here, and supervising and motivating sales executives. That is your job roles, and you have ensured display products or coordination with stock manager, head office, and warehouse there where the materials are lying. So as like other job roles, career particular fashion design is also particular context you can have job as assistant or senior manager. I hope I covered all
Yes.
the list are big and we have covered in our study material. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are you a fresh graduate? Do you want to fulfill your educational aspiration by pursuing higher education in various interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary areas like environmental science, environment and occupational health, philosophy, sustainability science, folklore and culture studies? If yes, The School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies offers various programs like Master's Program, Graduate Program, Postgraduate Diploma, Certificate and Appreciation Program. The school offers 5 Master's Program. Master of Science, Environmental Science. The eligibility criteria for MSc Environmental Science is Graduate in Science, B.Tech, BE, Agriculture Graduate, Forestry Graduate and Veterinary Graduate. School also offers Masters in Environment and Occupational Health, Masters in Sustainability Science, Masters in Philosophy and Masters in Folklore and Culture Studies. The eligibility criteria for these 4 Masters program is graduate in any discipline. The school also offers various socially relevant and need-based PG Diploma program like PG Diploma in Sustainability Science, PG Diploma in Environment and Occupational Health, PG Diploma in Folklore and Culture Studies and PG Diploma in Migration and Diaspora Studies. The school also offers PG Certificate in Climate Change and Avshist Prabandhan mein Praman Patra. The school also offers 2 doctoral programs, PhD in Environmental Science and PhD in Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies. The school offers various innovative technologies and multimedia for providing a very excellent student support system. The study material is of high quality. The learner support is provided through Gyan Darshan, Gyan Vani, IRC, Swayam Prabha and Swayam channel of IGNOU. For more detail, please log in to IGNOU website. For online admission in these programs, visit school site and also the Samarth online education portal of IGNOU. So please join these programs and fulfill your educational aspiration.
Dear learner, welcome to a very important session, knowledge, technology transfer and international trade, and I will be talking in the context of diaspora. This is a part of program PG Diploma in Migration and Diaspora, and this is course number MDI 005, Indian Diaspora Political Economy and Policy Aspect. This is block 2, economic impact of diaspora. All of you are now familiar with what is diaspora, but we have not done much actually. We have not learned much about what is its economic impact. In fact, diaspora today we talk about superpower, we talk about China, we talk about India's large economy. Partly the credit goes to the diaspora. We all know about the software boom in India and the power of China today. And today I will be talking about how this is possible in the context of fourth industrial revolution. We talk knowledge economy. We talk how diaspora provides a thrust to the economy, globalized economy, both in home and host country. And in this context, I'll be talking about knowledge economy also. My presentation will be like this. I'll have introduction where I'll be talking about social capital and how diaspora is a form of social capital and very important for globalized knowledge society. Then I'll be talking about importance of investing in knowledge, how globalized economy today, knowledge economy are very much knowledge intensive and how countries are competing actually to invest in knowledge. Then I'll give two cases. One is Indian diaspora, the other is Chinese diaspora. Then I'll conclude. Let's start. The objective of this particular presentation will be how social capital in the form of diaspora play an important role in promoting knowledge network and facilitate technology transfer and trade. We all know these are very important. Today to survive in global economy, we need to have knowledge base. Yesterday we were talking about brain drain. 40 years back, 50 years back, India, even including China and many developing countries, they suffered a lot in the form of brain drain because there are many of the talented people migrated to other countries, whether it is advanced countries like USA, Europe and all this. But over time, with the development of technology, with the development transport, with the development of kinds of satellite and all this, the brains are highly networked today. We all know social media today, how instantly we communicate across the globe. So this topic is very important. I will be talking more about that. In the globalized world, we all know that capitalism is very important. So also the human capital. We call this world system theory where some kinds of core like advanced countries like USA, Europe and all, they control the economy. It is not today. Even Europe controlled for close to 250 years to 300 years and exploited the entire globe to their benefit. Entire world was colonized and that is how they exploited the world in terms of raw material, in terms of human. You have seen, you have known the history of Indian people going to various places, Trinidad, Tobago, Mauritius, Malaysia and all this because of that world system was controlled by the European colonies, whether it is British, French or Dutch. But today again new form of colonies came. We call that is America is superpower and they are dominating different way. They don't colonize like British physically, but the colonization is because of knowledge, network and the capital. So this is also very important to know, and as we know, because of this knowledge world system, many countries are very powerful and many countries are like periphery. They are being exploited. Even in everywhere it is there. In the globalized world, or if you go to Asian countries, if you go to within India also, we see the system is how they are working. If you want to prosper one particular region, you have to pull people from across India. For example, urbanization in Delhi. You find Delhi gets people from all across India. All the skilled people, working class people, capital come here, everything. So this is how we call world system. World is a system where the center or the core exploit the periphery. That's how you can find in the knowledge economy also, the knowledge is exploited from by the center to the periphery. That is how we get the brain drain actually, where the advanced countries are taking the best brain from every country, from China, from India, from across the globe, from Mexico. You find this especially very important USA how they make visa policy to attract only selectively particular segment of skill based on their policy. So, but I'll be interlinking this with the human capital. We have three types of capital. If you divide them, one is bonding capital, bridging capital, and linking capital. This is not directly finance, but this facilitates everything. People just interact with other people, and they learn from them. They develop network. They create bond, and they create dealings. They create business. Like that, it goes on. So that is where it is very much important to understand how diaspora create this human capital through migration, through interlinking with others, and this is how they also develop certain kind of professional network, which we call in various form, alumni network, hometown association, professional network, entrepreneurial network. So this, when you talk about diaspora, these are the very concrete network, and through this we get lots of innovative way to interact, to promote economy, to engage in development, all these things. If you talk about Silicon Valley in America, this is an area where maximum people from India and China are there. Almost it's a place where immigrants are there, and that impacted India, where in 90s especially, the development of Bangalore and Hyderabad, Gurgaon, and all this are partly you can see the linkages are very strong with Silicon Valley, because the entrepreneurs in IT sector, they invested here and they mobilize various diaspora resource. So this, when we talk about knowledge economy and human capital, we have to see how the world economy is today, especially with the knowledge society, knowledge economy, and technological revolution. We don't find any barrier today, physical barrier. Even if we are in India, we can work for America. Even if you are in America, you can work for another country. So your physical, position, physical place that where you locate is not important. Your brain can work for any country, anywhere. So this is very important since the IT revolution happened in 90s. And diaspora across the world that was once considered as a brain drain became an asset. As I mentioned, 1940s, 1950s, 60s, 70s, up to 80s, people are always talking about brain drain. Even the famous economist in India, Jagadish Bhagavati, he even gave kind of suggestion to the then Indian government to actually tax people who are migrating to other country. Otherwise, India will become poorer and poorer. But things have changed over time because of technology, because of internet, and all this. So today, world has changed. We can see people can interact anywhere instantly. You have seen how knowledge society is working. I'll be talking a little bit about knowledge society also. This term actually coined, knowledge worker. The term was coined by Peter Drucker. He is considered one of the management guru. He coined this term in 1969, which he said that the knowledge, which is very important, it will be the key to economic resource. Unlike yesterday, people produce things, sell, and all this. Now people need not to engage in those things. They can just think, innovate, and all this, and things will happen. Machine will do. Many places you have seen just to do programming, and though there are no man actually involved, just to do brain work and things happen. Even in agriculture, legal studies, even education also, growingly you have seen human beings are replaced and knowledge, programming, and all this taken over. So this is very important. We have seen in every sector, even in medical sector also, you have seen how telemedicine is happening. You don't need too many people now. A specialist can be in America or in UK, and they can do medical service in India. because there are some specialized area where you don't find many doctors across the globe. So telemedicine is one where knowledge is important. Huh? Online teaching we are doing. We can do anywhere. Then we find almost every area knowledge is very important. So diaspora is nothing but it's a knowledge network. We can discuss, diaspora can be various form, but today's diaspora, you see, many are going because of career prosperity. They are going as a, professional, and to various countries. You have seen the kind of, institution like IIT, top universities, IIM in India. Once they, pass their graduation, they are simply going to other country for job. And this is what is important in the knowledge economy. And this is how over time it creates a network, because whenever human being migrate to other country, they don't just migrate like machine. They carry memory, they carry knowledge, they carry their own culture, everything. So that creates a bonding, and that facilitates other kind of association, network, and all these things. So we call that is very important in knowledge economy. So I'll be talking about how countries are also very much keen to attract this knowledge worker or brain from across the globe, and this is how they create lots of innovation. And today, if you see top economy like USA and China, Japan, Germany, these are the top economy in order, and they invest huge amount in R&D. And R&D nothing is knowledge. This is possible because they use the diaspora or migrant. If you see the USA, almost every sector you go, this is a country of immigrant, and they, in fact, their visa, most of their visa, they attract only high skilled people. Then come China. China's story I'll be talking in my case, how they use their diaspora. Japan, Germany. Germany has facilitated Japan and Germany since last 5-6 years. They are also attracting more, high skilled people across the globe to their countries. Then South Korea, France, then come India. India is very less as compared to other countries investing in R&D, but I'll be talking about how they can use, India is using also in some sector, but they can use better to harvest the diaspora talent in research and development. If you see the global map, this is the big, you see the circles. These countries are investing huge in R&D, and this is what drives the economy. When you talk about how the economy works and where people go to where, if you see this graph, United States of America is one of the number one destination. Number 2 is Germany. Number 3 is Saudi Arabia. Number 3 is Russia. Number 5th is UK. And who are the sending countries? India, Mexico, Russia, China. There are some countries which they are sending and receiving also, like Russia, Italy, and many countries. But you see the destination countries, they are actually selecting the best brain across the globe, and they are investing in R&D. USA especially, when I talk about how they select the top brain in the world, one famous H1B visa, all of you might be knowing. This is actually screening the talent, and maximum beneficiaries are Indian, then Chinese, then Canada, then other people. But H1 visa is only meant for high skilled people. Then now I'll be giving example of how this knowledge network and technology transfer and trade is happening with respect to two important diaspora, because China and India both are very large country and they have very large diaspora also. Chinese diaspora is around 45 million. Indian diaspora is around 30-35 million. So it is a huge diaspora put together is like another huge country. And they are geographically spread across the globe. Chinese diaspora is more than spread across 150 countries. India also with similar number of countries, and this is very important to see who once went as laborer, who went as worker and high skilled labor, how things have changed over time. Indian diaspora especially, if you go back to pre-British era, they have trade and business with West Asia, Southeast Asia, and that was possible because of again Indian diaspora network, religious network, cultural network, and all this. Then when colonial migration came, you all know the economy was devastated and trade and business was collapsed, and then India became colony, and whatever we didn't have much to do of our own, and that is how you find Britishers took the advantage and channelize this human capital, human resource to different countries, worker and whatever you have seen many. And after independence, we had a big challenge because the kind of a globalized business. They have centers in Abu Dhabi and other places. Diaspora and trade, when we talk about, diaspora work as an intermediary or facilitator. It is very important because when you deal with some country, you always take the help of known people, and diaspora is that it creates a lobby, it creates a facilitator, all these things as intermediary, and they can create various trade. And especially when you see the demographic, India's 30 million diaspora can also create a demand for certain kind of trade, especially ethnic market. Lots of product which goes from India and which are consumed by Indians because of their culture, like pickle, like food items and dress and all this. This has a great market in diaspora. And trade also, India had a long history of trade with West Asia and all this, but this can be done again very efficiently with diaspora, and in certain sector actually it is happening. Now I'll be talking about Chinese diaspora, which is also another big diaspora in the Asian country, and they have, unlike Indian diaspora, they have a large base in Asian countries. It may be Malaysia, Thailand and all this. So this facilitates their very geographically closed door, trade and business. And if you see today, these Asian countries together, China, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, these are one of the biggest trade zone in the world also. And all this because of Chinese diaspora. And this is called bamboo network, which is like supporting each other, or it also same way you can call Kwaupi, which is also family kind of network. So this is very much in diaspora, and this network they use to actually facilitate because these networks are based on trust, family relation and all. It facilitates quick dealings in business and trade and investment or technology transfer and all this area. So China actually also, you have to see the policy which helps the diaspora engage better compared to India in China's mainland, because Chinese diaspora invest close to 70% in China, whereas in India, Indian diaspora invest very less, 4 to 5%. So this says how the economy is also incentivized towards diaspora. So here you can see is the trade. If you see the trade, the world's number one trader is China now. It's almost taken over USA. And this is possible because they have a big diaspora base, and if you see the trade zones, these are all cutting across, and their own people are facilitating. And like Southeast Asian nations, Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, China has business with all these people. And all these countries, and they are all overwhelmingly Chinese people. Even if some countries they have less number, like Thailand, their population share is 3%, but economy they control 60%. Indonesia, they are just 4%, but they control the economy of 70%. Malaysia, they are 30%, they control economy 50%. So like that, Singapore, they are 75%, they control 90% of their economy. You can see this kind of, Chinese diaspora. So my point is, human capital is very important, and when you talk about Indian and Chinese diaspora, both have a large global base now, globally spread, high skilled, and today no sector is, you know, you know, less occupied by these people. Any sector you take, healthcare, IT, you find lots of Indians and Chinese, and that is how the new economy, the future economy is very much dependent upon this mobile human diasporic group who can actually facilitate trade, investment, knowledge network through whatever mechanism I mentioned, like a professional network, alumni network, and all this. So this we need to actually create a facility, infrastructure, institutional mechanism, all to facilitate more diaspora and homeland interaction, and where you can find all this as byproduct to facilitate. So you can read some of the books I have given reference, and thank you. I will conclude here. Thank you.
We wear clothes on a daily basis. But have we ever wondered, where do our clothes come from? Who makes our clothing? And who are the people and the process responsible for the whole manufacturing of our clothing? If you want to know more about this, Indira Gandhi National Open University from the School of Continuing Education has launched a program which is Certificate in Apparel Merchandising. There are many benefits after doing this program. You can become a designer in various fields. It can be fashion designer, apparel designer, costume designer, or even a textile designer. One can also work as a fashion consultant. Research and development is another field which one can take up after doing this certificate course. Going into academics is another perk after doing this program. Getting into fashion houses or fashion studios as an intern is also a very good option post doing the certificate in apparel merchandising. The basic eligibility of the program is 10+2. The duration of the program is 6 months to 2 years. The program is also available for both the admission cycles, which is July and January. The exams are conducted twice a year, in June and December. So what are you waiting for? Join this program and get an enriching knowledge in the field of apparel merchandising. And to do so, you can log on to the official website of the university, www.ignou.ac.in.
Welcome everybody to today's teleconference session. We'll be discussing the ordinal approach to consumer equilibrium. I am Chaitali Arora, research scholar, and I'm here with Professor Narayan Prasad, and we are from School of Social Sciences, IGNOU. In today's session, we'll be discussing the ordinal approach to consumer equilibrium. We have already discussed the cardinal approach to the equilibrium. In cardinal approach, the primary assumption is that consumers' utility can be measured. That is, we can express utility in numbers. Another assumption to the cardinal approach is that utility is independent and it is additive. Another assumption being that marginal utility of money is constant. Considering these assumptions, there were two conditions of consumer equilibrium that we studied in the last session. In a single commodity case, consumer equilibrium is given by the condition where marginal utility of consuming a good equals the price paid for that good. In a multi-commodity case, this condition is given by the principle of equimarginal utility, where a consumer is said to be in equilibrium when he allocates his income in such a way that marginal utility attained from per rupee spent on each good is equal. We had a great discussion about this cardinal utility approach, but there are many criticisms to this approach. For instance, as per modern economists J.R. Hicks and Allen, utility cannot be measured or expressed in numerical terms. Why? Because utility is a psychological phenomena. It is subjective. It depends from person to person, from time to time. Also, marginal utility of money that was considered constant by Marshall is not accepted by modern economists. Now we'll be discussing this with diagrams. Furthermore, let us discuss with Sir. Sir, how can we compare the cardinal and the ordinal approach to consumer equilibrium?
धन्यवाद चेताली। पिछले सेशन में जैसा कि चेताली ने अभी बताया कि हमने कार्डिनल अप्रोच की विस्तार से चर्चा की कि कंज्यूमर किस प्रकार से गणनावाचक उपयोगिता के दृष्टिकोण को प्रयोग करते हुए यानी उपयोगिता को अंकों में मापते हुए कैसे वो संतुलन की स्थिति को प्राप्त कर सकता है। पर इसके साथ कई तरीके की प्रॉब्लम जैसा कभी चेताली ने बताया ये सब्जेक्टिव फेनोमेना है, भावनात्मक विषय है कि कितनी उपयोगिता मिलेगी व्यक्ति से व्यक्ति वो ऑब्जेक्टिवली उसे मेजर नहीं किया जा सकता। और भी कई सीमाएं हैं इसकी कि मुद्रा की सीमांत उपयोगिता स्थिर नहीं रहती है। एक कमोडिटी की यूटिलिटी इंडिपेंडेंट यानी अपने में केवल आश्रित नहीं होती, कई कमोडिटी की उपयोगिता के साथ भी जुड़ी हुई होती है। तो ऐसी जब स्थिति पैदा हो जाती है तो हमेशा शोध का विषय रहता है कि हम उस विषय को और कोई वैकल्पिक कौन सी विचारधारा या प्रयोग हो सकता है या तरीका हो सकता है जिससे कि हम उपयोगिता को अंकों में बिना मापे और अपना काम चला सकें। इसी क्रम में हिक्स एंड एलन जैसा कभी नाम बताया, उन्होंने एक वैकल्पिक प्रयोग दिया, वो है क्रमवाचक उपयोगिता। क्रमवाचक उपयोगिता का मतलब है कि हम उपयोगिता को अंकों में न माप करके रैंकिंग कर सकते हैं, उनको ये बता सकते हैं कि भाई एक की उपयोगिता दूसरी वस्तु की उपयोगिता से ज़्यादा या कम हो सकती है। तो अब यहाँ पर कुछ फंडामेंटल डिफरेंस ये हैं कि उपयोगिता को रैंकिंग किया जाएगा और जब रैंकिंग किया जाएगा तो ध्यान रहे कि उपयोगिता केवल उपभोक्ता केवल एक ही वस्तु का उपभोग नहीं करता है, वो कई वस्तुओं एक साथ खरीदता है। तो जब कम से कम दो वस्तुओं को एक साथ खरीदे तो हम उन दोनों की उपयोगिता मिलाकर के कंपैरिजन कर सकते हैं कि तुलना कर सकते हैं कि इस बंडल से उपयोगिता दूसरे बंडल की तुलना में कम या ज़्यादा मिल सकती है या नहीं मिल सकती है। ये जब आता है तो कुछ हमारा विश्लेषण के तरीके में कुछ मूलभूत अंतर आ जाता है। जैसा कभी इन्होंने बताया कि हम संतुलन की स्थिति को उपभोक्ता को मुद्रा के रूप में अगर मापन करें, जिसको नाम दिया यूटिल्स, एक इकाई के रूप में हम मापन करें तो हमारा जो है एक अनुसूची मांग बन जाएगी कि भाई इतने रुपये के बराबर उपयोगिता मिलती है। तो यानी जब हम एक ज्यामेट्रिकल रिप्रेजेंटेशन करेंगे, उसको ज्यामितीय ढंग से प्रदर्शित करेंगे, तो हमारे एक्स और वाई अक्ष होंगे। एक अक्ष पर हम वस्तु की मात्रा को दिखाएंगे यानी उपयोगिता को दिखाएंगे, किसी वस्तु से प्राप्त उपयोगिता, और दूसरी तरफ उसकी कीमत दिखाएंगे। लेकिन यहाँ ऐसी स्थिति नहीं है, यहाँ पर तो दो वस्तुओं का उपभोग साथ साथ हो रहा है, दोनों का कॉम्बिनेशन का उपयोग हो रहा है। तो हम एक्स पर एक वस्तु को दिखाएंगे, एक को वाई अक्ष पर दिखाएंगे। अब सवाल ये आता है कि इसकी कुछ खास विशेषताएं हैं, जैसे कि एक तो हम उपयोगिता का मापन न करके हम उसे रैंकिंग करते हैं, क्रम बताते हैं 1 2 3 4 5 के क्रम में। दूसरा, इस विषय को हम पढ़ क्यों रहे हैं? पहले तो यही प्रश्न आपके मन में आएगा कि आखिर इतनी टेक्निकल बातों की जानकारी आखिर क्यों करे उपभोक्ता। देखिए, उपभोक्ता हमारा एक इकोनॉमिक एजेंट है, एक आर्थिक अभिकर्ता है वो, और उसको कई प्रकार के जीवन में निर्णय लेने होते हैं। निर्णय किस प्रकार का होता है कि भाई मैं कौन सी वस्तु खरीदूं, कौन कौन सी वस्तुएं खरीदूं, कितनी मात्रा में खरीदूं। अब इसके निर्धारण में, इन प्रश्नों के निर्धारण में दो तरीके के तत्व शामिल हो जाते हैं। एक तो ऐसी होती है जो सबको पता है, ऑब्जेक्टिव फैक्टर्स हैं, जैसे कोई वस्तु कितनी खरीदे तो उसे कीमत जानना जरूरी होता है कि भाई किस वस्तु की कीमत कितनी है। अब खाली कीमत ही निर्धारण नहीं करता है, उस वस्तु की एफोर्डेबिलिटी, जिसे हम इनकम के माध्यम से व्यक्त कर सकते हैं कि व्यक्ति की आय कितनी है, तो आय को भी जानना जरूरी है। अपनी आय के अनुसार ही कोई भी आदमी व्यय करता है। और दूसरा कीमत, तो कीमत और आय दोनों तत्व मिलकर के ऑब्जेक्टिव फैक्टर्स ऐसे होते हैं जो उपभोक्ता को निर्णय करने में बहुत उपयोगी हैं। बिना इनके ये उपभोक्ता निर्णय नहीं कर सकता कि मुझे कितनी वस्तु खरीदनी है और कौन सी वस्तु खरीदनी है। लेकिन उपभोक्ता एक ऐसा व्यक्ति है जिसके अंदर मन होता है, भावनाएं होती हैं, चिंतन होता है, उसके इमोशंस होते हैं, उसकी रुचियां होती हैं, उसके फैशन होते हैं। तो उपभोक्ता जब बाजार में जाता है तो ये भी देखता है भाई कौन सी चीज़ ज़्यादा चल रही है या मुझे कौन सी चीज़ पसंद है। तो ये रुचियां भी एक बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट फैक्टर है। तो अर्थशास्त्रियों ने इस बात को भी अपने मन में रखा जब इस विश्लेषण को दिया कि भाई उपभोक्ता की रुचियों को कैसे हम उस अपने विश्लेषण में शामिल कर सकें। तो उसके लिए रुचियों के संबंध में कुछ हमारे आपने फेमस नाम था एक्सियम्स, यानी सेल्फ प्रूव्ड कुछ फैक्टर्स ऐसे होते हैं जो हर एक उपभोक्ता के साथ देखने को मिलेगा। जैसे इनकी एक उपयोगिता ये है कि भाई कोई भी उपभोक्ता जो है वो रैशनल है, यानी युक्त व्यवहार करता है, अर्थात वो अधिकतम संतुष्टि प्राप्त करना चाहता है और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा चीज़ों का उपभोग करना चाहता है। रैशनलिटी की एजम्पशन है। दूसरा, प्रेफरेंशियल चॉइस का जहाँ पर सवाल आता है तो चॉइसेस के बारे में 3 तरीके की संभावनाएं हो सकती हैं। पहली संभावना तो यह है कि वो दो विभिन्न वस्तुओं के जो संयोग हैं, कॉम्बिनेशंस हैं, बंडल्स हैं, उनके बीच में वो तुलना कर सकता है। वो इतना दिमाग उसमें है कि भाई ये कॉम्बिनेशन अच्छा है या ये कॉम्बिनेशन अच्छा है। जैसे आम जीवन में आप देखेंगे, जब बाज़ार में जाएंगे, चाहे जूते चप्पल खरीदते हैं या कोई कपड़ा खरीदते हैं, तो आप देखते हैं कि भाई मुझे ये पसंद है या ये पसंद है। तो पसंद ऐसे ही जूतों के साथ मान लीजिए कि कोई मैचिंग की अक्सर देखते हैं कि भाई साड़ी के साथ हम ब्लाउज भी खरीदते हैं तो मैचिंग कौन सा होगा। तो ये मैचिंग का जो विषय है कि एक वस्तु के साथ दूसरी वस्तु कैसे फिट बैठेगी, तो बहुत सारे कॉम्बिनेशंस हो सकते हैं। तो इसमें अर्थशास्त्र ने 3 प्रकार की बातें बताई। एक तो ये बताया कि वो तुलना कर सकता है। दूसरा, एक स्थिति में अगर वो एक्स कॉम्बिनेशन को चूज करता है वाई की तुलना में, और फिर वाई की तुलना में जेड को पसंद करता है, तो ऑब्वियस है 3 कॉम्बिनेशन, तो वो जेड और एक्स अगर अवेलेबल है मार्केट में तो जेड की तुलना में एक्स को पसंद करेगा। ये कहलाता है, इसका कंसिस्टेंट बिहेवियर है। तीसरी चीज़ है वो जानेगा कि भाई जो कॉम्बिनेशन में उठाऊँ उसी की तुलना में कोई दूसरा कॉम्बिनेशन तो पहला कॉम्बिनेशन होगा, इसे रिफ्लेक्टिविटी बोलते हैं। और तीसरी चीज़ एक और है कि वो जो है अगर एक कॉम्बिनेशन कम वस्तुओं का है, एक कॉम्बिनेशन ज़्यादा वस्तुओं का है, तो वो ज़्यादा वस्तुओं वाले कॉम्बिनेशन को चलेगा, क्योंकि वो अपनी उपभोक्ता की संतुष्टि के स्तर को अधिकतम बनाना चाहता है। और कंज्यूमर इक्विलिब्रियम क्या है? बेसिकली इक्विलिब्रियम वर्ड अगर आप देखें तो फिजिक्स से आया है। इक्विलिब्रियम माने इक्वल, यानी जैसे जो तराजू होती है ना, जो तखरी जिसे बोलते हैं, उसे का तोला जाए तो तोला जाने में वो संतुलन की स्थिति होती है, यानी वो ऐसी एक स्थिति जहाँ पर ज़्यादा कम नहीं होना चाहता, यानी जिस स्थिति में उपभोक्ता बने रहना चाहता है। और उपभोक्ता बने रहना कब चाहेगा? जब उसे अधिकतम संतुष्टि मिल रही हो। अगर संतुष्टि में कुछ कमी है तो फिर वो अधिकतम संतुष्टि के लिए प्रयास करेगा। तो ये विषय है कि उपभोक्ता की संतुष्टि का स्तर अधिकतम कैसे हो, यही हम कंज्यूमर इक्विलिब्रियम के नाम से जानते हैं। तो अब उस विश्लेषण को एकेडमिक डिस्कोर्स में ले जाने के लिए, शैक्षिक स्तर पर ले जाने के लिए हमको कुछ चीज़ों की ज़रूरत होती है जानने की। जैसे किन किन चीज़ों की जानने की ज़रूरत होगी, हमें ये देखना होगा कि भाई जो डिफरेंट कॉम्बिनेशन से उनकी रिलेटिव प्राइसेस का रिलेशन कैसा है। यानी यहाँ पर हम एब्सोल्यूट प्राइस नहीं देखते, हम यहाँ पर रिलेटिव प्राइसेस में देखते हैं। और प्राइसेस का एक और सिद्धांत है कि जब किसी वस्तु की कीमत ज़्यादा बढ़ती है तो नेचुरली उसका उपभोग कम करके हम उसकी तुलना में जो सब्स्टिट्यूट गुड है, यानी और कौन सी ऐसी वस्तु है जिससे कि हम उसका उपभोग करें, तो कीमत का इमीडिएटली प्रभाव होता है प्रतिस्थापन के रूप में। तो ये जो है सब्स्टिट्यूशन, यानी एक वस्तु की कीमत बढ़ने पे उसका क्या प्रभाव पड़ेगा दूसरी वस्तु के खरीदने पर, यानी कौन सी वस्तु की जगह पे वो दूसरी वस्तु का उपभोग करना चाहेगा, ऐसे प्रतिस्थापन की बात कहते हैं। तो ये जानना जरूरी है। दूसरा, कौन कौन से ऐसे कॉम्बिनेशंस हैं, उसे हम शेड्यूल, अंकों के तालिका के रूप में देखना चाहें तो इंडिफरेंस शेड्यूल कह सकते हैं कि भाई डिफरेंट कॉम्बिनेशन, ए कॉम्बिनेशन, बी कॉम्बिनेशन, सी कॉम्बिनेशन, और हर कॉम्बिनेशन में दो वस्तुओं का संयोग है, कॉम्बिनेशन है, यानी ये एक्स और वाई का। तो ये डिफरेंट कॉम्बिनेशन से उपभोक्ता का जो स्तर है, संतुष्टि का स्तर सेम ही रहता है। यानी वो ए कॉम्बिनेशन करे, बी करे, सी करे, डी करे, कोई एक कॉम्बिनेशन बराबरी उपभोक्ता मिलती है। अब प्रश्न आता है कि इतने कॉम्बिनेशन पे कंज्यूमर क्यों हम बात करते हैं, उसे नहीं तो एक कॉम्बिनेशन ले लिया, बात खत्म हो जानी चाहिए। एक्चुअली क्या है, व्यक्ति हर एक इंडिविजुअल एक डिफरेंट होता है, उसके अलग अलग चॉइसेस होते हैं। तो वो अलग अलग चॉइस को कोई ए कॉम्बिनेशन पसंद करेगा, कोई बी करेगा, कोई सी करेगा, कोई डी करेगा, कोई ई करेगा, कोई एफ करेगा। तो अलग अलग कंज्यूमर्स के पॉइंट्स को ध्यान में रखते हुए हम एक ऐसी अनुसूची बनाते हैं कि भाई उपयोगिता का स्तर तो समान है। जैसे एक कपड़े की कीमत एक ही है, लेकिन कोई लाल रंग पसंद कर रहा है, कोई नीला रंग पसंद कर रहा है, कोई वाइट कलर पसंद कर रहा है। तो ये पसंद का मामला है। तो डिफरेंट पसंद को एकोमोडेट करने के लिए हमने डिफरेंट कॉम्बिनेशंस बना दिए। अब उन कॉम्बिनेशंस को हम अगर अंकों के रूप में करें कि भाई ये हैं, तो उसी को हम कहते हैं इंडिफरेंस शेड्यूल, तालिका के रूप में। अब उसी तालिका को अगर हमें ज्योग्राफिकल रिप्रेजेंटेशन देना है, यानी एक ज्यामितीय ढंग से प्रदर्शित करना है, तो ज्यामितीय ढंग से उन डिफरेंट कॉम्बिनेशंस को कनेक्ट करते हुए अगर कोई रेखा खींची जाए, कोई ज्यामितीय रेखा खींची जाए, तो उसे हम कह देते हैं इंडिफरेंस कर्व, तटस्थता वक्र, उदासीनता वक्र, कई नामों से जाना जाता है। तो एक तो हमको ये जानना जरूरी है। ये क्यों जानना जरूरी है? क्योंकि इससे जो सब्जेक्टिव फैक्टर्स हैं कंज्यूमर के, उसकी रुचियाँ, उसकी टेस्ट, उसकी फैशन, उसकी प्रायोरिटीज़, उसके प्रेफरेंसेस, ये रिप्रेजेंट होते हैं यहाँ इंडिफरेंस कर्व के माध्यम से। वहाँ पहले वाले विश्लेषण में ये समस्या नहीं थी, क्योंकि वहाँ रुचियों का तो ध्यान नहीं रखा जाता, तो वहाँ तो एक ही वस्तु है और वो खरीदता है। अब तो ये तो आ गया। अब लेकिन दूसरा फैक्टर है जो कंज्यूमर इक्विलिब्रियम को जानने में मदद करता है, वो है हमारा कि भाई कंज्यूमर की इनकम कहिए, उसे बजट कहिए आप जो है, तो वो कैसे प्रदर्शित हो, और वो जो है हमें प्राइसेस का भी उसमें इंडिकेशन होना चाहिए। तो मान लीजिए कि किसी उपभोक्ता की इनकम 400 रुपये है, 400, हालांकि आजकल के टाइम में 400 का मतलब कोई नहीं है, 4000, 10,000, 20,000, कोई भी इनकम हो, ये एग्जाम्पल के लिए है। तो अब उस 400 रुपये में मान लीजिए कि दो वस्तुएं खरीदना चाह रहा है, एक्स और वाई, तो जाहिर सी बात है उसे कीमत का पता होना चाहिए। मान लीजिए एक वस्तु की कीमत 10 रुपये है एक्स वाई की, तो 10 रुपये पर कमोडिटी पर यूनिट के हिसाब से कितनी यूनिट खरीद सकता है? वो 40। तो एक वक्र पर हम मैक्सिमम पॉइंट जो प्राइस लाइन का होगा, जो इनकम लाइन का होगा, वहाँ 40 पे हो जाएगा। दूसरा, अब हमें वाई वस्तु देखनी है। वाई वस्तु की कीमत मान लीजिए कि 20 रुपये है, तो 20 रुपये के हिसाब से वो जो कीमत आएगी वो 20 वस्तु आएगी। तो हम 40 एक्सिस पे, यानी एक्स एक्सिस और वाई एक्सिस, 40 और 20 जहाँ पर मैक्सिमम पॉइंट हैं, उनको मिलाते हुए अगर हम कोई सीधी रेखा खींचेंगे तो ये हमारी दो चीज़ों को दिखाएगी। एक तो हमारी इनकम को दिखाएगी कि भाई इनकम हमारी 400 रुपये है। दूसरी ये प्राइसेस को भी दिखाएगी कि भाई ये चीज़ 10 रुपये की है, ये चीज़ 20 रुपये की है। अब प्रश्न आता है कि हमारे सामने दो चीज़ें मिल गई। एक आपके सामने सीधी रेखा है जिसे बजट लाइन कहते हैं या इनकम लाइन कहते हैं। अब दूसरी चीज़ एक और है, कंज्यूमर की प्रेफरेंसेज भी हैं। अब एक चीज़ और आती है इंडिफरेंस मैप। यहाँ तटस्थता का मानचित्र जिसे बोलते हैं, तो वो कई हो सकते हैं और हर एक तटस्थता वक्र एक पर्टिकुलर यूटिलिटी लेवल को दिखाता है। और जैसे जैसे हम दाईं और ऊपर की ओर चढ़ते जाते हैं तो जो इंडिफरेंस कर्व है वो ऊपर की ओर चलता जाएगा। अब ऊपर का जो जैसे आपको ग्राफ में दिखाई दे रहा है यहाँ, ये IC1, IC2, IC3, तो IC1 में सबसे कम उपयोगिता मिल रही है, IC2 पर उससे ज़्यादा उपयोगिता मिल रही है, IC3 पर उससे भी ज़्यादा उपयोगिता मिल रही है। तो उपयोगिता तो वो अधिकतम करना चाहता है, लेकिन उसका एक सीमा रेखा है, उस सीमा रेखा से आगे नहीं बढ़ सकता। वो हमारी बजट लाइन है, वो सीमा रेखा है। तो बजट लाइन से अगर कोई ऊपर तटस्थ वक्र जा रहा है, इसका मतलब वो उसकी पहुंच से बाहर है, पैसा ही नहीं है। कोई आदमी कल्पना कर रहा है कि साहब मैं तो जो कार खरीदना चाह रहा हूँ और पैसा है नहीं, तो उस कार खरीदने का कोई महत्व नहीं है। तो अब हमें देखना है, हमें ऐसे तटस्थ वक्र का चयन करना है इनमें तटस्थ मानचित्र में जो दिखाए रखे हैं कि ना तो वो बजट लाइन से नीचे की तरफ हो, क्यों? क्योंकि नीचे की तरफ होगा तो उपयोगिता का स्तर उसका कम होगा, और ना इनकम लाइन से ऊपर की तरफ हो, क्योंकि वो उसकी अप्रोच से उसकी सीमा रेखा से बाहर है। तो हमारी अब ये स्थिति पैदा हो गई कि हमको ये पता लग गया कि भाई जो बजट लाइन और जो तटस्थता वक्र हैं उन्हीं में से कहीं संतुलन का बिंदु उसे प्राप्त होगा, यानी वहीं पर वो अपना इक्विलिब्रियम की स्थिति प्राप्त होगी। तो AB जो बजट लाइन है और IC वक्र IC2 है, ये ऐसे दो चीज़ें हैं, दो रेखाएं दिखाई दे रही हैं आपको कि यहाँ पर कहीं होगा। अब प्रश्न आता है कि ये जो पूरी रेखा पर कहाँ पर होगा, या तटस्थ वक्र इतना लंबा चौड़ा है, इस पर कहाँ पे होगा? कोई तो ऐसी रेखा होगी जहाँ पर को संतुलन की स्थिति को प्राप्त करेगा। तो अब आपने देखा कि हर आदमी कंज्यूमर होशियार होता है, दिमागदार आदमी है, चूँकि हमने बता दिया कि कंज्यूमर रैशनल है, तो वो रैशनल क्या करेगा, वो देखेगा कि भाई दोनों वस्तुओं की कीमतें का जो आपस का जो रेशियो है, यानी PX और PY का क्या रेशियो है, और फिर वो देखेगा कि अगर मान लो कीमत न हो, कितनी वस्तु के बदले में कितनी अदला बदली हो सकती है। इसे हम कहते हैं सीमांत प्रतिस्थापन दर। तो सीमांत प्रतिस्थापन दर का मतलब है कि X की कितनी कमोडिटी के बदले में, परिवर्तन में Y की कितनी चीज़ खरीदी जा सकती है। यानी कभी कभी ये देखा होगा कि आप पहले बार्टर एक्सचेंज सिस्टम था, एक चीज़ के बदले दूसरी चीज़ ले ली जाती थी, तो आप थोड़ा टाइम भी समझ लीजिए कि बार्टर सिस्टम है, और वो अंदाज़ा लगाता है कि भाई X वस्तु मान लो मैं इतनी अमाउंट दे दूँ तो कितनी Y मिल जाएगी मुझे, तो ये कितनी X के बदले कितनी Y वस्तु मिल जाएगी, यही है सीमांत प्रतिस्थापन दर। और प्राइस रेशियो का मतलब है कि X की और Y की रेशियो क्या है। अब ये जो दो रेशियो हो गए, एक तो वस्तु की अदला बदली वाला रेशियो और एक वस्तु की कीमत का रेशियो, ये जब दोनों बराबर जहाँ पर हो जाएंगे वही इसका संतुलन बिंदु होगा। और दूसरे शब्दों में हम इस प्रकार भी व्यक्त कर सकते हैं, इसी को बोलते हैं स्लोप, ढाल। ज्योमेट्री में स्लोप कैसे निकालते हैं, इसका मैथमेटिक्स का मामला है, वो हम अगले सेशन में लेंगे। लेकिन अभी आप फॉर द टाइम ये समझ लीजिए कि जहाँ पर तटस्थ वक्र की ढाल और बजट लाइन की ढाल बराबर हो जाएगी, और बराबर कब होगी ज्योमेट्रिकली, जब वो एक दूसरे पर टेंजेंट होगी, स्पर्श करती हुई जाएगी। तो आप देख रहे हैं हमारे रेखा चित्र में कि एक ऐसा बिंदु है जिसे E बिंदु बोलते हैं। इस E बिंदु का मतलब इक्विलिब्रियम पॉइंट है। इस बिंदु पर वो X की कितनी मात्रा खरीदेगा, वो X1, Y की मात्रा कितनी खरीदेगा, वो Y1। इससे अलग जो है कोई भी बिंदु संतुलन का बिंदु नहीं हो सकता। क्यों नहीं हो सकता? क्योंकि दोनों की ढाल, दोनों की स्लोप अलग अलग होगी, या सीमांत प्रतिस्थापन दर और दोनों की प्राइस रेशियो में कुछ अलग तरीके की सिचुएशन होगी। तो ये पहली कंडीशन। लेकिन एक ये तो नेसेसरी कंडीशन है, पर खाली इतने से काम नहीं चल जाएगा। आपको ये भी जानना चाहिए कि ये जो हमारा इंडिफरेंस कर्व है, तटस्थ वक्र जो दिखाया गया अभी अभी, उस तटस्थ वक्र की शेप हमारी कैसी है, कॉन्वेक्स टू द ओरिजिन। कॉन्वेक्स टू द ओरिजिन क्यों है? क्योंकि सीमांत ये उपयोगिता ह्रास नियम से ही मिलता जुलता है। यहाँ पर सीमांत प्रतिस्थापन दर बोल देते हैं, क्योंकि एक वस्तु छोड़नी पड़ती है दूसरी वस्तु कुछ पाने के लिए। तो कितनी छोड़नी पड़ती है दूसरी वस्तु पाने के लिए, ये दर जो है निरंतर धीरे धीरे घटती जाती है। और वहाँ क्या बताया था हमने उपयोगिता ह्रास नियम में, जैसे जैसे उपभोक्ता किसी वस्तु की एक से अधिक इकाइयों का उपभोग करता है, तो उत्तरोत्तर यानी सब्सिक्वेंट यूनिट से प्राप्त होने वाली उपयोगिता क्रमशः घटती जाती है। तो यहाँ भी वही नियम होगा लेटेंट मैनर में, पर भाषा दूसरी होगी। यहाँ पर क्या हुआ, एक वस्तु की जैसे से अधिक इकाई प्राप्त करता है तो दूसरी वस्तु प्राप्त करने के लिए उसके जो छोड़ने वाली जो वो दर है वो कम होती जाएगी। इसलिए ये कैसा वक्र है? ये वक्र है हमारा घटती हुई सीमांत प्रतिस्थापन दर। प्रतिस्थापन माने एक की जगह पर दूसरी बदलना है, और कोई नई चीज इसमें नहीं है। तो ये जो प्रतिस्थापन दर है ये कॉन्वेक्स होनी चाहिए। क्यों होनी चाहिए? क्योंकि अगर ये बढ़ती दर हो जाएगी तो वो स्टॉप थोड़ी करेगा, वो तो और ज़्यादा बदलेगा और ज़्यादा बदलेगा। तो ऐसी स्थिति वो संतुलन की स्थिति में प्राप्त नहीं करेगा। संतुलन एक ठहराव की स्थिति है जहाँ से कि उपभोक्ता अपनी स्थिति को बदलना नहीं चाहता है। तो मैंने बताया दो बातें आपको ध्यान में रखनी होंगी। एक तो स्लोप ऑफ द इंडिफरेंस कर्व एंड स्लोप ऑफ द प्राइस लाइन और बजट लाइन और इनकम लाइन वो बिल्कुल बराबर हों, और बराबर कैसे ज्योमेट्रिकली होंगे? जब एक दूसरे को टच करेंगे। और दूसरा, इंडिफरेंस कर्व कन्वेक्स टू द ओरिजिन होना चाहिए। क्यों बताया? क्योंकि कई परिस्थितियां ऐसी भी होती हैं जो इंडिफरेंस कर्व की शेप ये नहीं भी हो सकती। जैसे कहीं मान लीजिए कि परफेक्टली सब्स्टिट्यूट गुड है, तो वहां पर इंडिफरेंस कर्व की शेप हमारी बिल्कुल लीनियर होगी, सीधी रेखा होगी। क्योंकि उसमें उस सिचुएशन में जब एक दूसरे के पूरी तरह से प्रतिस्थापन है, बिल्कुल वही से हैं, तो फिर एक ही चीज खरीदेगा, दो खरीदने की जरूरत ही क्यों है? इसी तरीके से कुछ ऐसे भी होते हैं, एल शेप के भी इंडिफरेंस कर्व होते हैं। वहाँ कॉम्प्लीमेंट गुड अगर होती हैं तो कॉम्प्लीमेंट गुड में हम जो है इंडिफरेंस कर्व ये कन्वेक्स टू दी ओरिजिन नहीं होता है, क्योंकि वो दोनों चीजें खरीदनी पड़ेगी। नहीं तो जैसे जूते और मोजे, मान लो एक दोनों जूते, ये ज्यादा उदाहरण है कि आप अगर लेफ्ट का खरीदेंगे राइट का नहीं खरीदेंगे तो काम बनेगा नहीं। तो लेफ्ट और राइट के दोनों जूते जो है खरीदे जाएंगे, तब वो सप्लीमेंट गुड होंगी। ऐसी चीज़ में दोनों ही वस्तु बराबर बराबर खरीदनी होंगी, तो वहाँ सीमांत प्रतिस्थापन दर का कोई मतलब रह नहीं जाता है। इसलिए ऐसा है कि कॉन्वेक्स टू दी ओरिजिन वाला जो इंडिफरेंस कर्व है वही एप्रोप्रिएट इंडिफरेंस कर्व है हमें इक्विलिब्रियम की पोजीशन प्राप्त करने के लिए।
So if I revise what we studied in today's session is that we first has revision of the cardinal approach to utility, wherein we discussed that utility can be measured or it can be expressed in numerical terms. We also discussed ordinal approach in comparison to the cardinal approach, and we discussed how consumer attains equilibrium in the ordinal approach. We revisited the indifference curve, the indifference map, a budget line, and then superimposed a budget line and the indifference map and came across a consumer equilibrium point where budget line and indifference curves are tangent to each other. I hope you had great insights. For any doubts and questions, you can always mail us. Thank you.
We welcome you to join the bouquet of programs offered by the School of Humanities, the Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. The Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi is a mega university today. It was created by an Act of Parliament in 1985. It is the world's largest university with an enrollment of about 3.5 million current students and 3.2 million alumni. IGNOU has also been accorded the highest grade of academic excellence, A++, by the National Assessment and Accreditation Council, or the NAC. Now, during your time at IGNOU as a learner, we will help you complete your program of study with world-class printed materials, audio and video programs. We have more than 35,000 academic counselors who will guide you till you complete your program of study. We also provide live interaction with your teachers at the headquarters via teleconferencing mode and live interactive radio counseling besides this, supported by regular TV and radio broadcasts. The School of Humanities was created in 1988, and we welcome you warmly to join any of our programs of study. IGNOU degrees, diplomas, and certificates are recognized not only in the country but are also very well received across the globe. We look forward to your journey with us, and we welcome you once again. Now we shall talk about the postgraduate diploma in American literature, and its code is PGDAML. Now, the School of Humanities also offers 6 PG diplomas in various aspects of literature. Now, the postgraduate diploma in American literature, what it does, it sensitizes learners to different genres and aspects of American literature, such as the major American novelists and their works. Then we look at the major American dramatists. We look at the specificities of American poetry. How did it start? And we bring it up to the modern period. And lastly, we also look at something which is an integral part of the curricula in colleges and universities across the globe, which is literary theory and criticism. So we begin from classical times. We include romantic criticism, new criticism, feminist theories, deconstruction, and we come down to contemporary theories. The eligibility for the postgraduate diploma in American literature is a bachelor's degree or a higher degree from a recognized university. The medium of instruction is English. The duration is between 1 and 3 years. Your minimum period is 1 year, the maximum 3 years. And this program is offered in both the January and July cycles of admission. The fee is Rs 7,000 plus 300 rupees for registration at the time of admission. So in this particular PG diploma, we have a compulsory component, which is MEG 5, Literary Theory and Criticism, and then you choose any 3 courses. So you have a choice between MEG 6, American Literature, MEG 11, American Novel, MEG 17, American Drama, or MEG 18, American Poetry. So you choose 3 of these, and the 4th one is your...
Namaskar. A warm welcome to all my learners. Today we are going to understand the art of communication. Communication, as you all know, is important to understand because it is something which plays an important role in your entire journey, be it as a student, be it as a career person or a family person. So we all need to understand what communication is all about, what are the various important aspects that we need to focus and understand to make our communication effective. We also need to understand the various skills involved in doing an effective communication. I am Anamika Shukla from the School of Humanities here at Indira Gandhi National Open University. So to begin with, or to move forward, let us understand what are the demands of a formal conversation. Today we are going to focus primarily on formal conversation or formal communication. We are also going to focus on the finer aspects of speaking with special reference to a formal conversation. I am also going to, make you understand the fine line that divides or distinguishes the formal use of language from its informal use. Simultaneously, we also need to appreciate how the 7 C's of communication influence the formal conversations. So, think of 2 situations. I will give you 2 situations simultaneously. Say, situation 1, wherein you are in a conversation with your teacher, probably about an unsatisfactory state of your home assignment or a performance in your exam. There's another situation wherein you deal in a conversation with your mother about a demand which has been unaccepted by her, probably for a different dish at home. So, you're cribbing about what she has prepared for dinner. Now, you need to think and describe how the first situation is different from the second one. So, what is the difference between the 2 situations? How do you handle the 2 situations? Or what is your way of talking when first, when you're speaking to your teacher or somebody who is a boss or who is a guide or a superior, versus a situation when you're talking to your mother at home or probably your sister or your friend or your companion. So now these 2 situations clearly define the fine difference between a formal conversation and an informal conversation. So how do you, deal with the 2 in a very different manner and also successfully communicate the idea? Because the entire purpose of any kind of communication is to successfully, you have to be able to communicate the correct idea that you intend to communicate, because there is a lot of gap between, trying to convey and between being interpreted. So you have to fill this gap, the gap between conveying and interpreting. And the entire art of communication, or the entire mastery of this art of communication, deals in mastering this form of communication. Now, what happens is, see, we also need to understand that now, as I have, tried to explain you, there are 2 important phenomena when we deal with formal conversation. One is the domain. It is an important feature of a formal conversation, which is the notion of a domain and the notion of a register. So we need to understand how this register changes with domains. Now, what is register? So I would rather say that register is the form of language that is used in a particular domain. And a register is also a domain-governed phenomenon which reflects a domain-governed change in our choice of expressions. See, what happens is, a register would be, a domain would be a special space of interaction or the space where the action takes place. So now in this situation, as I've tried to explain you, the domain is your family dining table where you are discussing about the food being served for your dinner. So the domain is entirely different as compared to the domain when you're talking to your teacher at school or at your college or at your university. So now the domain plays an important role while deciding the kind of conversation you're going to deal with. Now, register also, implies to the use of language, the kind of language that you're going to use. So, register primarily is the form of language which you are going to use in a particular domain. Now, as we move ahead, what we are trying to understand is that each domain is a congruent combination. Now, the combination of what all? Of speakers, of the addressee, and also of the context of the conversation, and finally the topic. So all these contribute into making a domain. And register is the manner of using a language or a linguistic code, which is primarily applicable in a particular domain, and it is defined for a particular purpose. So therefore, I would rather give you certain examples of domain. See, when we are kind of dealing in a conversation in an office space, it is said to be a formal domain. So the office space is a formal domain. The classroom, again, is an example of a formal domain. If I say you're talking at home or at your dining table, then it is an example of an informal domain. Probably a coffee shop is again an example of an informal domain. So now the formal domain or the formal conversation is primarily defined as, you are undergoing rigid observation of conventions or etiquettes. So when you deal in rigid observance of convention or etiquette, when you primarily follow strictly conventional behavior, then you are dealing in a formal conversation. So now what happens is, now this formal conversation is definitely, it comes with a set of codes. There are certain distinctive features which you adhere to, and there is a certain defined manner in which you have to observe when you deal in a formal conversation. There are certain other variables also which affect a formal conversation. Like formality is a variable which affect the situation or the domain where the language users are physically or virtually present. It also influences the way we use language in an empirically verifiable manner. Now, formal domains are those social spaces of language use where we need to be serious and precise about the topic of conversation, because we have to keep in mind the professional context. We also need to display linguistic politeness and respect in accordance with the organizational hierarchy and the standard organizational etiquettes. So, these are the variables which we need to keep in mind while in a formal conversation. Now, impersonal or formal spaces, how do you differentiate? See, there are certain workplaces, your office, your university, your examination hall, these are all impersonal spaces. And factors that are needed for impersonal communication is, primarily you need to be serious, you also need to be precise and structured, and there has to be a certain courteous manner in the way which we use language to participate in an impersonal conversation. Now, how often we indulge in a formal conversation or an impersonal conversation? To propose a collaboration. We also indulge in formal conversation to decide upon the terms of an academic association. A formal conversation normally takes place in a formal domain. We are normally, we generally use it to address an official or a domain-specific purpose. It is not concerning the personal interests of the participants, and the participants adhere to the formal use of language. So these are certain important factors which we need to keep in mind while indulging in a formal conversation. So, it has its, I would rather say that a formal conversation has its own distinct components. Now, a formal composition is set in motion with the participants because, they kind of begin with greeting each other, which is followed by a formal introduction, and then subsequently they move to the specific topic or to the focus of conversation. So the participants, they exchange their ideas and they finally reach the conclusion in accordance with the protocols of the formal use of language. We also need to understand, how, like, I would rather give you certain examples of greetings, or how do you initiate a formal conversation. So any kind of conversation is something which we begin with. So what are the formal greetings? What are the what is the manner? How do we greet each other to initiate a formal conversation? So there are certain sample sentences for the opening of the conversation. You rather indulge in conversation by saying, "Hello, Mr. Singh," or "Hello, Mrs. Singh," and the response acknowledging the greeting would be, "Hello, Mr. Kumar," or "Hello, Mrs. Kumar." Now, or "Hello, Professor." Or maybe you can say, "Good morning, Mr. Singh," or "Good morning, Mrs. Singh," "Good afternoon," whatever. And then probably, "How are you?" And the response in a formal conversation, which is a general expected formal response, is, "Fine, thank you." Now, as you move from the formal greeting to the topic of conversation, how does it take place? So, pay attention to your screens, because I've given you a sample of formal introduction and also the response. So, Mr. Singh, for example, let me introduce myself. I am Arjun Sehgal, a final year student of the undergraduate program in humanities at IGNOU. Now, the sample response to this would be, "It is a pleasure to meet you, Arjun." Or you can say, "Pleased to meet you, Arjun." Or, there are other patterns of response wherein you can say, "It is a pleasure to meet you," "Pleased to meet you," "Pleased to see you," "Nice to meet you." So, these probably, when what happens is, the minute you are done with the formal greetings, and as you move ahead on to the topic of conversation, what happens is, there is, you have to kind of fill in the gap. As you move from greeting to the topic of conversation, you are making the environment a little relaxed. So this is the time when you introduce yourself, or probably I would rather say that the formal introduction takes place. This is the stage wherein you say, "I am so and so," and probably a general expected response is, "Nice to meet you," or "Pleasure to see you," or "Good to see you," or "Welcome so and so." So this is, how do you kind of go about while indulging in a formal conversation. You begin with a formal greeting, and then you move on to a formal pattern of introduction. Now, what happens is, you simultaneously, I would give you certain examples of formal conversations. Now, there are certain things which we need to avoid while dealing in formal conversation. There are contradictions which are strictly not preferred in the formal domain or while dealing in a formal conversation. So, rather than saying they won't announce the results till the last year, you would rather say the results will not be announced till the end of the year. Similarly, this can't be real. You would rather say this cannot be accurate. Or, I don't trust this information. You can say that this information is not to be trusted. So we are, the very foremost and the most important thing while dealing in a formal conversation is avoid using contractions. Rather, use straightforward and direct sentences. The second thing that I would like to highlight or bring to your notice is, while dealing in a formal conversation, the phrasal verbs are not preferred. So, phrasal verbs are not preferred in the formal domain or in a formal conversation. Only a handful of formal phrasal verbs are used, and that too very rarely. So the lack of cheaper opposition is putting the targeted segment of customers off. This is something which is not expected. Rather, you would say the lack of cheaper options is frustrating targeted segment of customers. The caretakers should leave at this very moment. This is the correct or the formal use of language, as opposed to the caretakers should buzz off right now. So, we generally avoid these kind of phrasal verbs while we deal in a formal conversation. In the sessions to follow, when we are going to talk about the informal conversation, I would definitely bring to your notice that there are certain phrasal verbs which we can deal with, or which we can engage while dealing in a non-formal conversation, or a conversation which is, because a non-formal conversation would rather be more subjective. When you are dealing in a formal conversation, you have to stay very, very objective. You are just putting the facts to the listener. You are just presenting the real situation. So you do not have to present even, not even the slightest opportunity to make yourself entangled, or your emotions or your feelings being expressed while dealing in a formal conversation. It has to be purely objective, purely, you are just putting the real facts and situations in a conversation, or you're bringing the facts to the notice of the people with whom you are dealing in a formal conversation. Now, formal conversation, what happens is, you also, there are interrogative constructions with modal verbs which are preferred in a formal domain. What happens is, rather than saying what is the benefit of this move, we would prefer saying, can you explain the benefit of this move? Instead of saying schedule this meeting for a later time, it is always advisable to use, could we schedule this meeting for a later time? Similarly, when you're looking for a cup of tea, instead of saying I want another cup of tea, we normally advise a much more formal use of language and say, may I have another cup of tea, please? I want to suggest a different issue for our next seminar. Instead of, saying this in a formal conversation, you're advised to use, might I suggest a different issue for our next seminar? So these are certain patterns which we need to follow while dealing in a formal conversation. There are certain colloquial expressions also, and also slangs, which are never allowed in the formal domain. What are these? What are those? Let us have a look. See, when you say the engineer got fired for his lame excuses, this is not advisable to use while dealing in a formal conversation. It is fine when you're dealing with in an informal conversation with your colleagues or friends or whatever, but when you are in a very formal set of people, or when you are using the language in a formal manner, the appropriate manner of saying is, the engineer lost his job for irrelevant excuses. Similarly, the new buy's presentation absolutely sucked. This is not advisable. Rather, use the newcomer's presentation was absolutely unimpressive. So, these are the various things which we need to keep in mind while dealing in a formal conversation. So, primarily, there are certain phrasal verbs which need to be avoided, deliberately avoided while dealing in a formal conversation. There are also certain colloquial expressions which we need to avoid, because what happens in a formal conversation, we always need to keep in mind that the domain, what is a domain? As I've been telling you earlier, when you are dealing in a formal domain, the register and the various participants who are dealing in this kind of conversation are very, very important to be understood and remembered. You need to keep all of them in mind. You need to keep that in a formal conversation there are certain set norms and patterns that need to be followed. There is a certain code of etiquettes which we need to adhere to. So the onus of dealing in a formal conversation depends upon the speaker, and the speaker has to take this responsibility. Now, in certain formal situations, the first person pronouns are avoided in a conversation. So, to achieve this, the passive form of the verb is used. Now, this bypasses the issue of being responsible for the action and is intentionally done by the speaker when he or she does not want to claim agency. So, I'll give you a few examples. How do you avoid this first person pronouns? For example, instead of saying, I asked the interns about I asked the interns questions about their past work experiences and job profiles. So rather than saying this, make use of the formal pattern. Rather say the interns were questioned about their past work experiences and job profiles. Similarly, instead of saying we have trained our journalists to investigate incidents regardless of actual ground challenges and adversities, make a formal use of language and you can say our journalists have been trained to report incidents regardless of actual ground challenges and adversities. During my meeting with my professor, I discussed my state of work. So, probably this is to be avoided, and a more formal form of language is during the meeting with the professor, my state of work was discussed. Similarly, another example, when it comes to taking risks, we never think twice. Rather, use a more formal pattern of language and say, when it comes to taking risks, there is no second thought. So, now this is the topic of discussion. So, as you've understood, we begin with formal greetings, then we move to formal introduction, then we, come to the topic of discussion. So, we discuss a lot of things, and finally is the formal goodbye. So then we reach to the concluding part of the conversation, of a formal conversation, which is a formal goodbye. So how do you deal in this formal goodbye? Now what happens is the formal goodbye is an important element or the important characteristic of any formal conversation. So a sample of formal goodbye would be, it was nice meeting you. It was nice meeting you too, Mr. Kumar. Or it was good to see you, Professor. Or you can also say that it was good to see you too, so-and-so. Another manner in which you can end a formal conversation, you can conclude a formal conversation would be, have a good day, Mr. Singh. Or thank you, I wish you the same. And then you can also conclude by saying a goodbye or a good night or a good day, as the case may be. Now, so primarily we have tried to understand what a formal conversation is. How is this formal conversation different from an informal conversation? So, there is a very fine line which divides the two. Now, what happens is, we also need to understand what are the objectives of a formal conversation, because, there is the concept of the register, there is also the concept of the domain, and the two are interdependent. So, the domain in which the entire conversation is taking place has an important role in deciding the kind of conversation, whether the conversation is going to be formal or whether it is going to be an informal mode of communication. It is decided, a lot of this is decided depending upon the domain of conversation. So the domain plays an important role. So dear learners, I believe you've understood the various sequence of a formal conversation, which necessarily has to begin with a formal greeting, formal introduction, then we reach the topic of discussion, and then a final goodbye. So this is what I've been trying to make you understand about a formal conversation or a formal communication, and we all need to master it because we deal in various kinds of formal conversation when we are at a workplace, when we are at our schools, colleges, etc. So I hope this is very, very clear. In the following sessions, we will be dealing with the other kind of conversation, which is the informal conversation. Thank you for now.